What is the occult and why should you know about it? Why is it so important to know what the occult really is? People have different ideas of what is meant by the word occult. You say this to some people and they immediately think of an image like this, a conjuration of a demon, okay? The word occult is derived from the Latin adjective occultus. Occultus in Latin means hidden from sight, not easily seen. The word occultus in Latin, the adjective in Latin, comes from the Latin verb occultare. Occultare means to hide, to conceal, or to keep secret. So ultimately, occult information is that which is related to vision, to what one is capable of seeing or not capable of seeing. It is hidden information. It is information that is veiled. It is information that is not readily seen. The occult is knowledge. Okay, let's get that straight from Jump Street, okay? We're talking about knowledge here, hidden information. And it's knowledge that is held very tightly by a few people on earth. It's not widely known, okay? It's structured knowledge in many cases by different traditions. It's hidden knowledge that is hidden for a specific reason, and that's to create a power differential between people who understand it and those who don't. When we get into talking about occultism, we have to understand the difference between these two terms, exoteric and esoteric. Exoteric means something that is intended for or likely to be understood by the general public. Okay, it's common knowledge. Exoteric knowledge or exoteric wisdom. All right, it's current or popular among the general public. The general public is comfortable with it, okay? The word exoteric comes from the Greek adjective exoterikos. Exoterikos in Greek means external or outside of. The exoteric realm is that which is fed to the great hordes of unwashed masses. Simple explanations, unidimensional worldviews and explanations for things. And when we penetrate that, next layer, we get into the occult traditions, the esoteric sciences that get us closer to the very core, to the heart of truth. The esoteric is information which is intended for or likely to be understood by only a small number of people with specialized knowledge or interest, or occulted. It is mysterious. It is beyond the range of ordinary knowledge, experience, or perception. It is that which is communicated only to the initiated. The initiated means those who have begun. Okay, I tell people about my former involvement in the dark occult. And these dark occultists called the average human being, one of the very strange terms that they called the average person is the unbegun, which I didn't even understand what it meant when they said it to me repeatedly. That is what occultism is. It's understanding the laws of nature and our connection to them, the self's connection to them. Okay, and as a result, we are aligning all of our thoughts, our emotions, and our actions toward the goal of the evolution not only of our individuated self, but the evolution of all beings. This is what is known as the minor knowledge of the occult, the minor arcana. Arcana is a Greek word that means knowledge. Okay, I have a Latin word that means knowledge. I tell people don't look at this because it's called the minor arcana or the lesser arcana as meaning of lesser importance. That is not what it means. It's just distinguishing it from that which is larger in scope as far as the kind of systems that it actually affects or that it governs. Okay, so you want to look at the part there on the left as this is the small scope of things, the scope of things operating at the individual level, at the individuated domain of the individual self. And then on the right-hand side here, you want to look at the major or greater arcana as simply being that which deals with the macrocosmic world, the world of large things, large systems of nature, okay? The physical laws that, deal with dynamics and motion and gravity, etc. all of the physical dynamics, electromagnetism, etc. But then the major or greater arcana, the world of macrocosmic knowledge, also includes the knowledge of what I call natural law, the moral laws that govern the consequences of behavior of beings that have the capacity for holistic intelligence, or in other words, universal moral law. The occult is a double-edged blade, however. There is, again, a light side to it and a dark side to it, and it's all dependent on how that knowledge is used. So the knowledge contained within the occult sciences can be used for good, which I consider the uplift of consciousness, or it can be used for evil, the manipulation of consciousness, the control of people, and ultimately putting people into bondage and slavery. That's what I call light occultism. When you use this hidden knowledge toward the uplift of humanity, toward the expansion of consciousness and the expansion of morality. So the other way of using it is for manipulation, control, and the suppression of consciousness. And if this knowledge is used in that methodology, then I refer to it as dark occultism or sorcery. So why has such knowledge been hidden from humanity? Well, we'll look at why each set of occultists hide this information. Okay, first let's look at why dark occultists hide it, then at a later point we'll look at why even light occultists sometimes conceal this knowledge. Dark occultists have deliberately hidden occult knowledge in order to create and maintain a power differential between those who hold such knowledge and those who are ignorant of it. We've already been talking about that. And through this mechanism, all power ultimately flows to them, because knowledge applied is power in the world. Knowledge is not itself power, it is the potential for power. Dark occultists work through fear and manipulation to bring about compliance with their own selfish will. And that's what I would consider the dark arts in general. I would consider sorcery the act of applying knowledge in order to bring about manipulation in other people so that they comply with your selfish will, what you want for you only, not for the uplift of all. Dark occultists' work is always done in secrecy. They don't want to do their works in the light of day where everyone can know what they're doing. They're constantly contravening the freedom and prosperity of all but themselves, of course. That's the out-of-control ego run amok, the pure left brain, modality of consciousness, without the balance of the sacred feminine, compassionate, creative right brain. If you think the spiritual domain is not where you are at now because you're in the physical domain, you're mistaken. If you think that the spiritual domain is someplace other than the physical domain, you're also mistaken. If you place emphasis on one above the other and say, well, this one takes precedence and this one's not important, either way you do it, whether you say the spiritual is more important and the world of matter should not be given any significance, it's imbalance, and it's not true. So natural means spiritual. These words could be used interchangeably. So when I'm talking about natural law, I mean spiritual law, unseen spiritual laws. But overall, the dictionary definition of natural is it's inherent to nature and it's not made by man. The word law the definition is an existing condition which is both binding and immutable. So let's look at each one of these words. Existing, it means that it is present. It is present. Okay? It cannot be just ignored and expected that, well, that doesn't make it true and it's not going to have an effect. It's there. It's present. That's why it's a law, that it's in operation. The universe is both holographic, meaning that the whole is contained in the parts and vice versa, and it is fractal or self-similar across all scales of its existence. That's the principle of correspondence. The principle of vibration simply states that there is no such thing as rest, as dead or non-motion, okay? Death, in that sense, is an illusion, because true death would be the cessation of all motion and energy. There is no such thing. It doesn't exist. You cannot go anywhere in creation where something is at complete rest. If something's in existence, it's in motion. Everything moves, everything vibrates, and at the most fundamental level, the universe and every single thing which comprises it is ultimately pure vibratory energy that is manifesting itself in different ways, different frequencies, different vibratory forms. The universe has no true solidity as such, as we imagine solidity at the macrocosmic level. Matter is merely energy in a state of vibration. And what this is, if we truly understand this, and many sciences are now finally really understanding this and trying to propagate this knowledge out into the public, we will come to the understanding that this is a spiritual construct. So nothing is truly solid. You know, it's again, like we say, we are spirit having a human experience. The whole universe is spiritual, having a experience in solidity. All right, that's how you have to look at the principle of vibration. The principle of polarity states that everything has a dual nature to it. There are polarities in everything that exists. Okay, everything has poles. Everything has its pair of opposites. However, opposites, they are identical in nature, but they're different in degree. So let me give you an example of what that means. Are hot and cold really opposites? Or can we simply look at them as the presence of heat energy or the absence of heat energy? Meaning that they're the same thing, energy. And whether it's concentrated in a specific area, which would make it hot, or whether it's absent from a specific area, which would make it cold. Okay? That's what hot and cold are at the fundamental level. At our level of perception, they're opposites, but at the fundamental level, they're the same thing, energy or lack thereof. Just like those three stages of the trivium. Are knowledge and ignorance the same thing? Yeah, actually they are. Because truth is always present. It's a matter of whether it's taken in and processed, or whether it's refused to be taken in and it's not processed. Okay? So it's just like that. They're identical in their natures, but they're different in their degree. Okay? Extremes can meet and blend and, you know, play with each other, like as depicted in the yin-yang symbol, masculine and feminine. They need to be blended. And at some level of reality, everything that is seemingly contradictory may be reconciled. Now, again, I stress the term at some level. At the unified field level, everything is consciousness, pure consciousness. Everything flows out and in. Everything has its tides. All things rise and fall. Okay, so everything has a rhythm to it or a swing to it. There's tendencies that exist in energy. The pendulum swing manifests in everything that we undergo, everything that we perceive. The measure of the swing to the right is the measure of the swing to the left. It's just an opposite. It's perceived as an opposite. Rhythm will compensate. Now, how this should be understood when we are talking about natural law is many people will say, well, that's just the way the tendency is moving us. It's just the way the tide is taking us, right? But that's not really accurate. Okay? We can't look at these things as that the rhythms are set in stone and it has to be this way now, right? One of the things that a lot of the Hermetic tradition taught regarding these laws, these principles, were they can be overcome by higher levels of consciousness. Okay? This one was one of them. Rhythm is a principle that is a tendency for something to swing a certain way. Let's liken it to genetics. You know, if you look at some newer biology, a lot of modern biologists are suggesting consciousness plays into whether a gene activates or not and expresses a certain condition. Well, this is the same way. There's something that can be done about the swing or the tide. Effect simply states that every cause has its effect and every effect has its cause. Every single thing that occurs happens according to law. All right? Chance is a name for law, a law not recognized. There are many planes of causation, but nothing escapes the law. So again, is there free will? Yes, there is free will. But is there free will to ignore law without consequence? No, there is not. That's the limit of free will. Free will is operating within boundary conditions that I'm referring to as natural law. It's a series of laws, actually, okay? Free will operates within these parameters or boundary conditions that cannot be exceeded or gone beyond without consequence. Oh yeah, you can break natural law. Yes, you can break it, but you cannot break it without consequence. I ask people, just tell me, what are the ways you could ever make yourself known to any other being? How can any other being come to know who you are in this incarnation, in this physical manifestation? How could they possibly come to know you? How could you manifest yourself or make yourself known to them? And there's only three ways: thoughts, emotions, and actions, okay? And I would say speech falls into the line of the combination of thoughts and emotions. It's a neutral force. You don't look at your thoughts as masculine or feminine, do you? But you do look at them as creative forces. In order for anything to manifest in the physical domain, it had to first exist as a thought. This computer, somebody had to envision all the parts, how it works, how it's put together, okay? This camera equipment, the clothes you're wearing, the seats, everything that exists had to first exist in the realm of thought. Had to. By law. Then it comes into physical manifestation through action. Your emotions are a polarized component, you could look at it as. It is a feminine aspect of consciousness. Because other people don't feel your emotions, they could perceive or sense them. You're the one who's feeling the emotions in your physiology. It's an internal expression. You feel emotions inwardly, inside in the physiology. Hence, this is a feminine expression for consciousness. It is something that is not externalized and put out. It is something that is felt within. So the emotions in the mind-body-spirit connection are the spirit in which we do something. Okay, so that's the feminine force or the spirit. Of course, thoughts are within our mind, hence that's the mind component of the consciousness. Then there's a marriage between them. Okay, so you can look at thoughts as the creative essence, which then blends with or marries to the feminine. Now, see, we're getting into a notion that is taught in many different religious traditions. It's called the Trinity. And I challenge anybody, go and look in any of the trinities that exist, in any of the religions. You can go back to Babylon. You can go to the Indus Valley traditions. You can go to the Egyptian and Cometian traditions, the Christian traditions. Every single religious tradition that is taught of a Trinity, okay, it is always a Father Creator, a sacred feminine figure, okay, of some kind that the Father then impregnates or inseminates in some form. And then from that offspring is born a male child. Always. Okay? What we're talking about here is the Father being the mind, the creative essence. Then the spirit or the emotions being the sacred feminine essence. Okay? Or the Holy Spirit, the emotions. And then the child, the male child, is behavior. It is the active or masculine principle that actually interacts with the physical world to change it. And hence, that is the only way to actually save ourselves. And again, people in religious thinking will immediately attack this and say, you're saying that saving ourselves will not come through faith. Yes, I am. Saving ourselves will only come through action. Action will save humanity. Faith will not do it. So, sorry to again, smash another egoic attachment that people have to religious notions. But these religions are created by the control system. Okay? People don't understand that exoteric Christianity is created by the dark occult, of the ancient dark occult mystery schools. They don't understand where this religion came from because they haven't studied astrotheology. And I'm not telling you there's no good concepts in any religion. I say take all the good concepts and leave the nonsense. Because one of the nonsense is that you need to believe in something to be saved from the current human condition. You don't need to believe in a thing. You need to know the truth. And right in their own religion, there it is. Let me just stay on this for a moment, because in their own scripture, the exoteric Christian scriptures, what is the one prescription that the Christ figure gives to the people when he is asked about freedom? He's only asked about freedom like once in the Gospels, okay? In the words attributed to his teachings. And they want to know what will save us, what will make us free, and what is his prescription? No, that is not. There's something missing there. You're close. What is the actual saying? Know the truth. Knowing the truth will make you free. That's the prescription, even in exoteric Christianity. It's right there in the Gospels. But Christians don't want to hear that, because the controllers in the church who came from the dark priest class gave them this nonsense that all you have to do is believe and everything will magically change. Well, good luck with that. When people's behaviors have no alignment with morality, you think your belief's going to change something? Again, let me know how that works out for you. And again, I'm not mincing words up here. You know, I'm telling it like it really is. I don't care who it offends. So, the expressions for consciousness are thoughts, emotions, and actions which are likened to, in the consciousness community, of mind, spirit, and body. And it's a trinity. A father creator, which is the thoughts, the mind, the feminine essence, which is the mother of the trinity, the emotions, the inward aspects, the spirit, and then they give birth. When the thoughts and the emotions come together, they give birth to action in the world, which is the male child. This is very important to understand. I hope everybody is clear. This is our internal trinity, which constitutes the expressions for consciousness. Okay?